Hi, this is Rich Malloy, and I wanted to take a second here as we talk about putting an essay together for English Fundamentals for Business and go over a couple of real quick reminders. These might be things that people have heard me discuss in class at great length, um, or they might be things that can remind you of what you may have heard before. I am aware that this isn't your first English class. A lot of you have experience writing essays. If I think about revising, I kind of get the idea that I need to be very, very clear that what we remember or what we stop to think about sometimes goes right past us. So these quick reminders, and I don't do anything very quickly, I guess, are just to kind of bring us as we start the process to the same beginning. So let's just start with a blank board. Right as we begin our writing, I want to think about three ideas that I often repeat. And the question that in written communication, certainly students will most often ask is, hey, how do I get this started? And the second question is, I'm not sure how to end it. Can you help me end this thing? What that means is, if I'm asking the students to describe a place, they have that image in their head. They know what they want to talk about. How do I get this started? And how do I wrap it up? So let me think. First, those of you that I've had in grammar sections before have probably heard me say repeatedly, we write the way that we listen, not the way that we talk. A lot of times students come in thinking that they're more confident if they write exactly the way that they speak and they kind of get chatty and they're colloquial. That isn't really it. In a grammar class, I talk about the way that we listen. We're impatient listeners. We want people to get to the point. We don't like to get bogged down with details. And a lot of times, students come into my class putting commas in the right place because they'll tell me they heard a pause. We write the way that we listen. We are not particularly patient listeners. We like people to get to the point. So that means make sure that when you're writing, you're being as precise as possible. That doesn't mean that you're writing a checklist or that you're being so brief that you're not very well developed. But we like people to tell us very simply who, what, and when. As far as essays are concerned, that brings me to the introduction. I need to capture the reader's attention and get them into my thought process as I work my way to a thesis. In written communication skills, I will often tell students if you're writing an essay, you have a very similar job as a stand up comedian. A stand up comedian has, at best, 15 seconds when they come out on stage to get the entire audience, whether it's 3 people or 3,000 people, to think exactly like they do. If I'm a comedian and I don't get the audience to think like me, I'm not funny. If I'm writing an essay and I don't use my introduction to walk the reader slowly into my train of thought, I've lost them. We're taking the reader for a walk. We can't afford to lose anybody. Second, establish a single identifiable idea for your essay at the end of the paragraph. At the end of the introductory paragraph, that's called your thesis statement. And last, please don't ramble. We're not patient listeners. We don't suffer that very well. Next thought, the hardest part of writing is revising. Please don't skip it. I want you to think about the things that you do every day that come very, very easily to you. Tying your shoes, brushing your teeth. I'll bet you did that this morning before you came to class or left the house, but I'll also bet you didn't think about it very much. I worry about that in a writing class. Once people get the format, once this becomes relatively easy and they get confident, they're done revising. They don't think about it all that much. And when we stop revising what we're doing, we kill what we're writing. We miss details. Please take time to consider spelling mistakes. And as a guy who once was a great speller before he started correcting papers, let me tell you, take the time to look over your paper. If you're typing it, look at those red underscores. Figure out that the word is actually spelled right, even if you have to Google it. Commas are oftentimes things students use when they think they hear a spot, a pause in a sentence. That might work, but go back and look at where your commas are. Make sure that you're using them properly. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have complete sentences. Make sure that thesis that you had at the beginning of the paper is something you're still supporting in all of your body paragraphs. Sometimes people get a very good start in an introduction and then they start to wobble a little bit and forget why they're there. Come back to your thesis. Make sure every topic sentence carries it. And finally, be cautious of those simple errors that we all make, killing your paper, especially in business writing. That could be a fatal error. Finally, I just said take your reader on a journey or take your reader for a walk. That means we have to end where we started. Don't take your reader on a one-way trip and drop them off someplace that they're unfamiliar with. You take them back. And when I say take them back, I want you to go back and look at that introductory paragraph. If you look at the documents for this unit, I have uploaded some strategies on one side of the sheet. Actually, basically it's 2 pages. On page 1, the document talks about strategies you might use to get started. Ask the reader a question. Start with an image, even if you're saying something to shock the reader. I want you to end where you start. Come back to answer that question you asked. Come back to that image. Come back to something the reader is familiar with. That just means you're bringing the reader back to where they began, wherever they, if you will, left the car. Nobody likes to get lost. Make sure in your concluding paragraph that you restate the thesis or that controlling idea of your paper. As you conclude your essay, use the last paragraph to repeat or summarize your main points. Start with that. Please don't start with in conclusion, comma, or something like that. The comp instructors I've seen are not very happy to see that. And your reader already knows you're at the end. Use the topic sentences of the body paragraphs for the summary that follows that thesis at the end. It should walk you right through the main points of your paper. And again, end by referring to an image at the beginning of your introduction or answer a question. Come back to something that you got the reader's attention with initially. Good luck, and I'm sure everything will go very, very well.